All right, welcome to another episode of the Educators Podcast. I am Mr. Burdon, and with me is one of my favorite people on the planet, someone that I had the pleasure of working in education with during the pandemic, which was crazy. We're going to definitely talk about how that went down. But she is one of my favorite people. She is a super rock star educator. And I know the term rock star educators gets thrown around a lot, but she is truly one of those that the kids love and remember. She is no longer a fourth grade teacher, and there's congratulations are in order for Mallary Gillmore, who is now a middle school gifted resource teacher. Congratulations and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for that fantastic introduction. I love it.
Of course. Yeah, but you definitely are one of those teachers that the kids will remember their whole life. You know, you're one. I constantly would see the kids excited to have you. You know, coming. You know, the kids from fifth grade coming back to see you and saying hi and all that. So, and you had a knack for making learning fun. You would come up with some really cool stuff. You had some really good strategies, and any teacher that walked into your room could tell that there's kid-focused centers, kid-focused activities, and you're a rock star. So how you doing?
Thank you. I appreciate all that. I am doing really well.
How is life as a GRT?
Okay, so glad you asked.
Yes.
I'll just preface this for anybody listening who doesn't know that I have never been in middle school. I was very apprehensive to come to middle school just because it was so foreign to me. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I just kind of took a leap of faith here and was like, I'll try it out because the stress in the classroom was just getting to be too much. Yeah. And honestly, best decision. It was the best decision.
Congratulations.
It's crazy. And I've been here about 2 months now. I've lost 12 pounds.
Yes.
Not even doing the same things I was doing before, you know?
Yep.
I go to my massage therapist monthly. She was like, oh my gosh, what have you been doing? There's so much less tension I'm feeling.
Your aura is centered, your chi.
Yeah. She's like, I'm not feeling as much tension build up. And I'm like, I really am attributing it to this change.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's such a cool thing to hear. It's in what ways is your current job different than before? I mean, obviously the stress difference, but like logistically, what does it entail to be a gifted resource teacher in middle school?
Well, I feel like in the middle school setting, you have a lot more freedom, a lot more flexibility. Elementary schools, you know, they have to screen all first graders. They have to screen all fifth graders. Well, in middle school, I don't have to screen anybody.
Oh, wow.
So the cool thing is that it's all parent recommendation or teacher recommendation or my recommendation. So last week I was in some English classes. We had a debate about Pop-Tarts of all things. And one of the girls, I was like, wow, she is definitely going to be a lawyer when she grows up. If she's
Objection.
not. Yeah.
Frosted Cherry is number one.
She needs to be.
Yes.
So, you know, and after I left, I come back and look and I'm like, wow, she's not on the list. I'm definitely going to put her down for my recommendation. So there's a lot of freedom. It's my own schedule. It's just,
great.
Yeah, it's very different. I get to, you know, I have elementary school GRT friends, high levels of stress. I think honestly, it's elementary school as a whole that is like the stress zone.
Yeah.
Because even the teachers here, I mean, nobody calls out like they do in elementary school. People are just not as stressed out. People are happier. It's just a completely different environment.
Absolutely. I mean, we can get into all the things that stress out elementary school teachers. We can definitely get into that. But I have some questions too. Like, when you're looking at a candidate for the gifted program, is there one set of skills or one thing in particular you're looking for? Or is it like a variety? Like, okay, this one is great at writing. This one is gifted in math, or so. Is there something like, do you look for different things in different students?
Yeah, so actually a big misconception with gifted students is, I'll hear teachers say there's no way they're gifted. They're not organized. They're failing. They're not,
Yeah.
not gifted. I don't have anything to say about this student. That's a huge misconception. There's actually a whole list of concomitant traits of gifted students, and those are those adverse traits that where they're not shining, they are struggling. It could be something as, questioning authority, which
Yeah.
not defiance, but questioning authority. Well,
That
why
could be
is
that lawyer friend of yours,
yeah, not that I'm not going to follow this rule, but what's the point of it? Why do I
Yeah.
have to do this? Why are things this way? There are so many different traits, and it's not has nothing to do with actual intelligence. Rather, it's the way that they think about things, thinking about things in ways that other students don't. So just looking out for those different perspectives or those traits of perfectionism is a huge one. All kinds of different traits that they can display.
It's kind of like that. Like in my experience, is gifted students are not necessarily like quote unquote the wicked smart kids. It's the kids that adapted differently as they're growing up, as they
Mhm.
were the cookies in the oven. They grew. They had a different perspective, and that affected how they developed. Like some of my most gifted kids were also my most absent-minded. I had a
Mhm.
student that I would constantly have to shout her name as we're leaving for lunch because she would be engrossed in a book. She would be like this in a book, and we'd have to kind of shout, like we're all lined up getting ready to go to lunch, and we'd have to shout her name to get her to come over. But she, like the stuff that she would come up with, there was another student that got passed over a lot because when he would get a problem, a lot of students would just look at 4 or 5 different possible answers. He would freeze up because he would see like countless possibilities and he would almost overthink, but a
Mhm.
lot of times it manifested as him like clamming up or being like being quiet. Do you see stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of times they might not be the best communicator. Like you said, they just may have so many ideas that it's hard for them to get it out. Or, they may be so laser focused on one perspective and they're just adamant that they're right, that they have a hard time sometimes even seeing other perspectives. So I think it's important for teachers to know that there are just more than just those general, oh, well, they catch on really quickly, they're gifted. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, that's one trait, but that's not everything we're looking at.
Do you also see a handful of twice exceptional students coming up?
I have a couple,
Mhm.
not as many as I would expect, but that is something that we're looking into for next year. Maybe one of our goals to try to identify more twice exceptional students.
Yeah, that's something I've noticed sometimes too. And again, like I think sometimes the misconception has always been, gifted means wicked smart, and
Hmm.
whereas like I had a student that was very intelligent and yet was also dyslexic, but
Hmm.
he was over his aptitude was overcoming, like his problem solving skills was overcoming his dyslexia. So he would look at a passage or he'd read something and he would struggle with the reading and comprehension because the words are all over the place, but he would understand. It's almost like he was gaming the questions, like he
Hmm.
would do well on tests because he kind of would figure out which answer to choose.
Yeah.
And but by the time he got to me, I started noticing, like I'd have him write the word now and he'd write OWN.
Mm.
And I asked him, I said, what did you just write? And what he would say now. And it's just, he was reversing those letters. And these were his words, but I talked to his mom and he would always come home and complain that in language arts groups, he would always end up with the booger eaters is what he called them.
Hmm.
That was his
Aw.
word. But I know but it's like what it was he did he was overcompensating one side and he was missing it in the other. And when we finally were in the in the meeting for his diagnosis for IP, and it's the discussion. One of the things that bothered me was the whole talk about they were like, well, he's on grade level, so does he really need any help? And I'm like, yes,
Yeah, he
yes,
needs
yes.
help.
Imagine he's here But like with overcoming all these obstacles, can you imagine if he got the help he needed? He'd be the
Exactly.
limit.
Yeah, exactly.
I see that. I see that, and I do see that. When I was doing the robotics club, that the kids, sometimes the kids that were where things came easy to them before, when they're actually faced with a challenge, they struggle. Whereas
Oh
the
yeah.
kids that are used to overcoming challenges tend to do better. Do you see that?
Hmm. Yeah, I do actually. Especially here in the middle school setting, the interactions I've had just with parents and teachers thus far is that in elementary school, everything came so easily to them. They didn't have to study. They didn't necessarily have to be organized.
Yeah,
So we are doing a lot of focus on executive functioning skills with our gifted learners because they're coming to middle school. The
bad habit.
content,
Yeah,
yeah, they're coming with bad habits, and then the content's harder. It's a lot more to manage. They have a million different teachers, and sometimes they might have to study, but because everything's always come so easy to them, they're just not used to it. So we're trying to work on building those executive functioning skills, especially one area they're really struggling in, particularly gifted students, is language classes.
huh?
Yeah.
Like language other than English, or like
Yeah, like Spanish, French, and we think that it has a lot to do with the fact that they're just not used to having to study.
yeah,
They're
having
like, things
yeah,
have always been easy for me. Why should I need to start studying now? So it's
absolutely. I get that. I get that. I've seen that in elementary. I'm sure you've seen it too, where the kids
mhm.
that are they're used to coming to them quickly, and then they all of a sudden it's like, well, how do I do this? And it's like, well,
Mhm.
no. Meanwhile, the kids that have been practicing those disciplines when they get to middle school and high school, it's like they got it. It's like
Yeah.
it's natural. Do you also see sometimes, or perhaps in your elementary school teaching, did you notice sometimes where kids might get misidentified as like they get some of the behavior problems are really boredom manifesting themselves? Like you get a kid that's bored, so they disconnect from the material. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
especially when we're teaching such enthralling subjects like Werawakomiko and Jamestown. I mean, I don't know how that they're not choosing that over how they're choosing TikTok and YouTube and Among Us
I know.
over that. But
Yeah, I've definitely seen that. In fact, when you were saying that, I had a couple of kids, specific children, come to mind. I was like, that's her.
yep,
Um, yeah, so I definitely think, especially in the elementary setting, I think that there are a lot of misplaced responsibilities on different staff. And I don't think that GRTs in an elementary setting, I don't really think they get to fulfill their potential with
yeah.
their role because they have so many other things to do. And it's hard to help those teachers come up with challenges and extensions for students who are getting easily bored because they just know the material.
There seems to be a disconnect between the official role of a GOT, gifted resource teacher, and what is actually put on their plate. It sounds like you get to be more of what it used to be in elementary school and what it kind of should be.
Hmm.
Is just like a special educator, is their purpose is to give the tools for this child so they can the extra support that a student may need to succeed, that needs extra supports, where a GRT, correct me if I'm wrong, but a GRT is kind of the other end of that bookend. They're like, okay, these are the kids that are here. I mean, that are getting it. What are the extensions? What's the next level? How are we going to next level them? Is that
Right.
would you agree?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are definitely a couple of responsibilities. We have to facilitate testing and,
Yeah.
a couple, just like any job, there's a couple of different little
Yeah.
paperworks and things we have, little minor tasks. But definitely, yes, in the elementary school setting, I go to the district GRT meetings and the elementary school teachers are like, oh, well, the last 2 weeks I've been subbing every day.
Yeah.
And well, I don't want to jinx myself. I haven't subbed one. I haven't subbed one day.
Miss Gilmore, we're gonna need you to cover.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't subbed one day, but like I said, also here in my new setting, people just aren't calling out like that. People are not as stressed, as they are in elementary school. And it was really eye-opening because I had a gifted lunch bunch, and one of my sixth graders, they really connect with me, I think, because I'm still so elementary zoned. But they were like, "Do you ever miss teaching fourth grade?" And my instant reaction was no. And so then I had to catch myself because I didn't want her to think it was about the kids, because it wasn't about the kids. It was never about the kids. I love the kids, still do. But the stress and the demands of being in the classroom, I mean, you couldn't pay me to go back, honestly.
No, you couldn't. And one of the reasons I retired was really because of that. And that was the hardest thing for me to do, is convince these teary-eyed kids when I told them I was leaving that it wasn't them. In fact, they were the reason I stayed as long as I did.
Yeah.
And I've talked to, we've had conversations off the air and numerous conversations with other educators. It's that the kids are why we're still putting up with a lot of the BS.
Exactly.
And I feel like sometimes that's used against us by folks that aren't having to struggle like we are. That make more of those decisions. And it is a shame that the elementary school GRTs, which it used to not be like that. Their jobs used to be a lot more like what you're doing now. When I first started, you came from a different district than I did, and we kind of merged, and we in the middle of the chaos, which I didn't want to talk about. But when I first started and teaching the gifted cluster, and I'd interact with GRT, the first couple of years, that's exactly what she was doing. She would come in, we would collaborate on lessons, and she would pull some kids for certain things, and she would do whole group stuff. And we were always working. She was always coming up with, hey, this is a way to extend this, or hey, I'll take this lesson and we're going to do this. And, she was always involved. And then something shifted. And it was about the same time when they started referring to the specialists as coaches. And that's when I noticed the same thing happened with the math specialists and reading specialists. They became coaches, and a lot more got put on the teachers as far as that stuff. And the coaches became more administrative. And the GRTs, I mean, we spoke to our most recent GRT that we both worked with, and she seemed frazzled because she's constantly being told that she's being denied these great lessons. Having to go do a lot of administrative stuff, and it almost feels like they're putting at least two positions on one person. Like there should be almost somebody else that comes in and does the assessments while she does the lessons, or while he does the lessons.
Somebody said something interesting to me yesterday, and that was, in middle school, we have student support. Like we have a person who's specifically for student support, and that's never been in elementary schools. But I guess, and she was like, well, but why not? Like elementary schools, she had never been in elementary school, but she said, from my perspective, it seems like they're drowning.
Yes.
And I said, yeah, they are drowning.
Well, let's talk about that for just a second. You and I have been working together. Oh, is there somebody trying to break in?
Sorry, yeah. Just grabbing my trash.
Oh, good. Hey, how's it going? Hello. Here's another thing to talk about too: the backbone of the school system are custodians, because the stuff that they have to encounter, not just in the classrooms, but all over the place, and including, we got a incident in the restroom. Go down. We have a puker. But that is interesting too. The lack of support in elementary school, the lack of available personnel, and just to kind of get back to a story between us, is you and I worked together. We were both in the same fourth grade team. I had dropped to third grade. You stayed fourth grade. But in the beginning of the year, you announced congratulations, you got promoted to this GOT position. However, it was contingent that they found a replacement for you.
Yeah.
And that was in August
Mm-hmm.
of last year. Yet they didn't find a replacement for you, and you weren't able to transfer to your new position until January.
Yeah. Second week of January.
What do you think are the contributing factors to why it's so hard to find educators now?
Oh, so many. Talk all night about this. Just on my list.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the top two that come to mind are time and money.
Yeah.
You know, they don't correlate in education.
No.
We put in so much time. There's not enough time in the day. And I think there's a lack of understanding from the general public for everything that teachers are responsible for.
Mhm.
You know, they have to plan. If you are not good at planning, you're not going to be an effective teacher.
Exactly.
But there's no time.
Yeah.
But then it goes back to caring about the kids. We're all in the field because we care about the kids. So we're going to put in the time, but they're not giving us the time. So we're using our own time. We're cutting into time for ourselves, our family, household chores, you know, and then when you consider that and then look at the pay scale that teachers are on, it just doesn't add up. So I think that those are two of the biggest contributing factors to why we're just not getting teachers like we used to be.
Absolutely. And we get told, but you have your planning time. But what happens to that planning time?
Exactly. Yeah, we get meetings.
Yeah, we get meetings scheduled. We get IEP meetings scheduled during your lunch. You have collaborative planning. That was always a funny thing too, that how collaborative planning morphed into this. They called it professional development.
Yeah.
Where it was almost like, I'd like to look more into the administrative perspective of it, but to us, it's just a lot of times it's almost like checking a box, but it's eating up our whole time when that's when we could be doing some planning. But even then, I feel like there's so much else on our plate that I found, like, even my lunch break, when I would get a lunch break, I'm spending 10 minutes unwinding.
Yeah, for sure.
Just from because you have to be on. I've said this before. When you're a teacher, you're not just teaching the lesson. You have to be a mom, a dad, a psychologist, a counselor, a nurse, a doctor, a game show host.
Exactly.
You have to be a comedian. You're competing with a bunch of kids who would rather be on YouTube or TikTok or playing Among Us or Fortnite. And you have to get Where Wakomoko artifacts interesting to them. Now, there might be one or two kids that are stoked that we're going to look at Arrowhead. And you know those kids. They're going to be like, I'm going to bring some arrowheads and show you tomorrow. I was in Yosemite. But then the rest of the class, they're like, nah, son. They're like, they're done.
You could really care. You couldn't care less. You know?
Yeah, they could not care any less. And you have to do that you have to be on point all day long.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be that person, and you have to have that mojo. And then I can't imagine then being a parent and coming home.
Yeah.
Your mojo is spent, and now you've got your family and still trying to be that mom at home.
Yeah. I can just say, you know, like I said, the stress factor at work has significantly decreased, but it's definitely had implications at home because, you know, like you said, I used to get home. I have 3 small kids. They're all in elementary school. And I would come home and I would say, I love you. Hi, give me a hug. I need 10 minutes. I just needed to sit. I needed quiet. I needed nobody needing me for 10 minutes. Like before I jump into mom mode and make dinner and do 10,000 other things, you know, I just needed that time. Now I come home, I'm like, let's go on a bike ride. Who wants to go on a walk? Like, you know, it's the demands are, and we love the kids, you know, like we both said, but it is a very demanding, a constantly demanding job.
It is. I vowed when I started this gig 2 things, and I'm not going to let this job kill me. And the moment that I started resenting the kids, I'm out, because it's not their fault.
No.
But if you no longer have the energy to be the teacher, like, there were days right there towards the end where I knew, like, the old school Mr. Burdon would do this cool thing, but I'm so tired and so beat down and so exhausted that I can't. And I get mad at myself and down at myself. They don't know. They don't see, kids don't see, but it's like I felt like I wasn't being able to be me anymore. And a lot of it was morale. It was, being overworked. And it's like you said, you come home, if you don't spend a couple hours each night, you're spending it all day Sunday.
Yeah.
Trying to do stuff. And it's certainly not fair. It's certainly not comparable to what we're not getting paid.
Right.
That the compensation is not worth what we're having to put up with. But I will say this, you just talking with you right now, like, because you and I haven't seen each other in a while, you seem so much happier. There's a glow about you right now that wasn't there even a few months ago.
Yeah.
But you were among many that had that same kind of, what's going on, the kind of look. So much happier right now.
Thanks. I truly am. I truly am. I always think about this quote. It sticks with me. You can have courage or comfort. And I'm so glad that I had the courage to just try this position out, because it really was the best choice.
And now you have the comfort.
Yeah, exactly.
Working out so well.
Yeah.
You and I first met and became colleagues when you transferred from another school district to Virginia Beach schools. And right in the middle of a pandemic, you and I we were, just to explain, an entire grade level, all of us new to the building.
Yes.
I was the only one not new to the school system, but we were all new to the building. You were new to Virginia Beach schools. The other two tag team partners on our team were brand new teachers. Or they had teaching experience, which caveat, they had teaching experience and interaction with kid experience. It wasn't like they were just fresh out off the teacher factory. But they had the skills. But that was quite a moment. How did you feel coming into that whole situation, on top finding out that 2 of the 4 of us had to teach virtually at the time we only thought it was going to be a semester, turned out to be the whole year. How did you take us through that whole moment of coming over?
Okay, well, I was like, holy cow, what have I done? What have I gotten myself into? Jumping districts is hard because everybody does it differently. Virginia Beach, they don't pace out their curriculum the same way. They flip-flop some of the 4th and 5th grade curriculum. Everything was housed in Schoology at the time, which my previous district did not use. And then, kind of, I feel like you and I took one for the team and said, okay, we're the veterans. We'll do virtual. That's probably going to be the tougher of the 2. We'll do virtual. It was terrifying, especially because I wouldn't say that I'm, not good with technology. I utilized it in the classroom all the time, but just being new with curriculum and on a new team and in a new division, I can honestly say that you really helped me through that. Like, I felt comfort in doing virtual because I knew I was doing it with you and I knew that you would be there to help. And I knew that you were fantastic with technology. I just knew we would be a good team right off the bat, me and you.
Well, thank you. We were a great team. And the good thing is, though, the fortunate thing is we didn't have any tech problems at all. Everything worked great from the start. There was no building the airplane in the air with this system. That whole thing, that first week when nothing worked, we're trying to,
oh my gosh.
Hey, kids. That was tremendous. And, again, keeping it positive, but also being realistic. We pretty much had to rewrite curriculum to translate it to the virtual format.
For
because
sure.
they were asking us to they were telling us to have kids get Play-Doh out and, do all this like shared like stuff that like, I'm like, wait a second, there's no way these kids are gonna be able to do this in a virtual setting. But we made a great team. I think there was a lot of like adapting. I think one of the coolest things was that one shared group email where all the fourth grade teachers could share stuff. And
that was awesome. I love that.
we had all kinds of like, hey, this is cool and all that. But you and I also came up with cool stuff. And what's cool is that you had such a library of fourth grade stuff from Norfolk that we could adapt. And, you had what was, I can't think of, Nearpod.
Yeah.
Nearpods. And we got to, that was very helpful in getting a lot of the technology going. And I can't imagine, me, throwing me into technology, let's be honest, that's like, throwing a fish in the water.
Yeah.
However, I can't imagine teachers that are so used to teaching, and not saying that they're afraid to adapt or won't grow, but so much at such a critical time, they have to completely overhaul their teaching style and the stuff that worked for them and adapt it to this unknown, and then to not have a lot of that stuff in place on the first day of school.
Yeah, I know that had to be a major challenge. I do know a lot of the older teachers that I worked with, particularly in Norfolk, when it came time and we were starting virtual, they were like, I'm out. I'm done. It's a lot to take on, in a position that's already very demanding. And now you have to learn how to do it a completely different way. So one thing looking back that I can say, I guess I felt, I don't know if more supported is the right term, but if you remember, we used to get those Mondays that were dedicated to planning, and it was like, oh, they finally realize we need more time because we're digital. But at the same time, now we're not virtual, but we're still doing the same thing. It's still the same responsibilities. We're still having to create those lessons that are engaging. Just because it's not virtual doesn't mean we don't still have to do it. So I did feel like they respected our time more.
Yeah.
And I mean, in COVID in general, just the one positive about COVID is when I reflect, I'm like, wow, I really had time to do everything.
I did too. Like, I feel like that's something that should be looked at again. Because I felt more productive having that Monday, because when you take that away, when you can't, because the Monday, when you take that away, the Monday becomes Sunday, where you either have to choose to not spend time with your family, or not choose you time, which is much more important than people give credit for. If you're not using you time, you're using that time to do these lessons. Whereas having that Monday, it was business. I mean, it wasn't like we're sleeping in till 10 and we'll go in here, we're still in our pajamas. I mean, granted, there were times where I was still in my pajamas, but I was working, doing lesson plans and setting stuff up for the week. And
exactly. And even having those PD meetings on that day, like you said, well, then that frees up our actual planning time on every other day.
Exactly. I think time and money, but I also think support is important too. And there's only so many you're amazing at whatever you do candy bars.
Right.
Those don't really do anything. If you want, and jeans passes don't
even get me started on jeans. For a person who doesn't like jeans.
Yeah, right.
Not how you get to me.
It's becoming an inside joke on this podcast, the jeans passes, but that always killed me. I don't like to wear jeans. I like to wear a nice pair of slacks when I'm teaching, and they're comfortable. The jeans are uncomfortable.
Exactly.
But and then I've had coworkers, like one of my coworkers at my old school, she would wear like black jeans, and they looked like dress pants, but they were jeans. But this whole notion that like, we don't need to pay you, here's a jeans pass. It's almost insulting. I mean, it's almost like we're trained. A good teacher knows to get to know their students and what motivates them. And in fact, a lot of the stuff that they train us, that we learn as good teachers about our students. It's almost like they need to practice that with us.
Right.
Like, what is going to motivate us?
Yeah.
Like what am I going to do with a Sephora gift card?
Exactly.
Or what?
Or how many Starbucks gift cards I got, and I don't drink coffee. I'm like, oh, who am I going to re-gift this to?
I have a confession too. It's like, and I have thrown away so many coffee mugs that my students have given me, and it pains me because each one of them was picked out by the kids, and they're like, Mr. Burdon, you like Iron Man, and here's Iron Man. And I'm like, and then by the time, but like this summer, we're opening the cabinet, and there's like 50 coffee mugs, and I'm like, I gotta get rid of some of these.
Yeah,
but I feel like it's we're kind of getting to an evolution, I think, with a lot of things. I think the hiring crisis is something that needs to be addressed, or things are going to get a lot worse. But as technology evolves and kind of how we look at other things, I feel like maybe I'm naive, but I feel like it may have to get a lot worse before it gets better. But I do feel like, especially in elementary, that we're going to get to a point where teachers are going to have to be recognized for what they do, and they're going to need that support.
Yeah,
and it's not worth whatever pennies they're pinching downtown to lose these great educators that they are losing.
Yeah,
quite frankly. To switch this around, though, I want to again compliment you. I want to reciprocate, because getting through that COVID time with you was great, because you were also a rock for me to lean on, because your attention to detail, and you were that point of contact of like, hey, strategies. This worked in fourth grade. We had this, and I felt like we made a good team. How does having a good instruction team, or colleagues, or just in general, you talked about it earlier, the overall vibe of where you work, how do you see that influencing your performance and just your outlook on your job?
I think it's very important. So reflecting throughout my teaching career, from when I had a very good, strong team, or even just a partner, to times when I did not. Mm-hmm. When you don't have a good team, you're already feeling stress, and most people are feeling like they need more support from admin or downtown or whoever it is. And then when you don't have that support on your team, it can feel very isolating. Yeah. And teaching is not a career where you can be isolated. You have to have somebody you can vent to. You have to have somebody you can bounce ideas off of and actually collaborate with. I've left positions for not having a good team.
Yeah.
Because it's just that important.
You've got to feel secure. And I think that even goes for your administration too.
For sure.
You've got to feel supported, and not just your principal. It's got to be above that person, because you could have the best principal in the world. And I think very highly of the recent principal I left, the one that had just started at the school I left. But what was revealing to that is, even with a really, really solid leader as a principal, it might not be enough if the supports aren't there beyond, if their hands are tied.
Right. And I can attest to that too, because I've been very fortunate. Again, don't want to jinx myself, but I've had 3 principals in my career, and they are all phenomenal. Like I can't complain. I couldn't ask for better. They were all very amazing. But also recently, I went through the master's program, and I got my admin license. And shadowing and working with the principals, there's a lot that they do that we don't see. And there's a lot that they really don't control.
Yeah.
And it's like there's a disconnect, because a lot of staff thinks, oh, well, it's the principal, but so many times it's actually not. It's above them.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like the facilitators of the rules for the building, but they're not the ones making the rules.
I think there's some room for how that gets translated to the staff. but I think you're absolutely right. I think what I think a lot of people outside of education don't understand about teachers. Sometimes as teachers don't quite understand about the administrators,
Mhm.
the principals. You were pursuing an administrative career path, and had some awesome colleagues that you were in that program with. What was that? Partly pretty much what changed your mind about pursuing that was just seeing what was on the plate of an administrator.
Yeah, for sure. There was, like they say, the higher you get to the top, the lonelier it is.
Yeah.
That's one thing. I'm not a lonely kind of person. I'm social. I like to have a good team.
Yeah, you're
Not
very
saying
introverted, Mallory. You
yeah,
don't like to talk to people at all. Neither do I.
no. But just the fact that in the break rooms and in the hallways, you hear teachers complaining, no matter who the administrator is.
Mhm.
And, like I said, so often they just don't realize that it's not in their control.
Yeah.
And, to me, looking at a principal role now, I see high stress. Yeah, the pay is a lot better than mine, but I see high stress. I see taking work home. I see taking stress home, and I just see parents frustrated no matter what you do, students
Yeah.
frustrated no matter what you do, staff frustrated no matter what you do. And to me, even though I'd be getting that salary increase, it's just not worth it. I'm seeing now as I'm going through my education career that I don't want to have all this stress, It's so toxic to everything, your relationships, your body, it's just not worth it.
Well, you're definitely in the right spot because you seem so much more you. Like you seem so much happier. You seem relaxed, and either like I said, there's like a glow about you now. You're like, yeah, I got this. I can't imagine what principals go through, and you and I have worked with many different principals, and they manifest differently too. There's some that they're very transparent with that, and there's some it's they try different things, but
Yeah,
I think a lot of the issues in education are systemic and go way beyond them,
for sure.
and that's what needs to either change, or there's going to be there's going to be a famine rather
Yeah,
than just a teacher shortage.
right.
But I want to turn this around, go positive again. Think about one or two lessons or activities that you did that you just had so much fun teaching or getting kids involved with, that just ear to ear, like, yes, this was so cool.
One thing that comes to mind, excuse me, I'm thinking about social studies.
All right, if you say Wacomico or Jamestown, I'm ending this podcast right now. Now go ahead. If it was,
I can't talk about Jamestown. But one of the things that comes to my mind is I would come in one day and I'd be like, oh my gosh, guys, I'm not allowed to give you paper anymore. And if I do, your parents have to pay 25 cents for each piece of paper I give you. And I'm like, I'm really sorry. Today we have this 10-page packet. And they're like, what? My mom's going to be mad. That, they're getting furious. They're like, what? This isn't fair. What do you mean? Why did she didn't vote for this on school board.
I'm calling my mom right now.
And one year I even got my administrator to come in and say, I'm really sorry, guys. The district, we're short on money. And so you're going to have to pay for this paper now. And they were just completely outraged. And, we let it go on for a couple minutes. And then we're like, oh, just kidding. We're just kidding. Don't tell your parents. We are totally not charging you. But it was a great segue into looking at England and the colonies and why they were so frustrated over here, being taxed with no say.
That's not fair. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, well, do you see why they were so enraged now?
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Of course, typical me, I have that one student that opens his wallet and goes, here.
Oh, of course. Of course.
My granddaddy just gave me a couple hundreds. There you go.
Oh, good.
That's cool though. Yeah, those are the lessons the kids remember too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think when you really break down teaching, we're preparing kids for becoming adults. And, in general, there's the specifics of math, language arts, that kind of thing. But in general, we're teaching them to be problem solvers, to be critical thinkers. And our role is to put them in that disequilibrium.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel like that's where the learning takes place. And the best lessons are those, what?
Uh-huh.
What?
Got to get them passionate about it.
I am offended at this. This is no way. That's cool. That's cool. So, well, Mallary, it's been fantastic catching up with you. I'm so excited.
You.
I'd love to have you back on, and
Okay.
we could chat more about all things education. And in fact, what I was thinking is you and I could bring on the person that we got for the astronomy field trip in the other couple years ago to do a 3-hour presentation to your class.
My son went to that field trip today.
You gotta fill me in on how that went.
Oh, goodness.
All right, well, this is the moon. Space to me is like one of my hot button science things.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I really get excited about. And I have never been that bored with space stuff. And bless his heart, because he's one of those engineer mentality guys.
Oh, yeah.
Like a lot of those tech-minded people. There's those that are super tech-minded, but what they make up for in tech mind, they don't have the personality for. And it was like listening to a digital recording of a digital translation of a computer.
Yeah, it was
incredible. Well, Mallary, thank you so much for joining us on this Educators podcast. Love to have you back. Everybody, please like, share, subscribe, all that. Free jeans passes for the first 50 people to comment. And Mallary, do you want people to find you on socials, or you want to keep your anonymity?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep mine.
So
okay, I'm working on getting a gifted Twitter. I'm not there yet, but maybe by the next time I'm back, I'll have that for y'all.
All right, so you will not see the gifted Twitter handle here.
Not
yet.
You
will not see that, but next time we bring Miss Gillmore back, she'll have the gifted Twitter. Make sure you follow. Make sure you check us all out on Twitter and YouTube. Thanks again, Mallary. It's a pleasure. And everybody have a great week, and free jeans passes for the first 50 people.
Woohoo!
Bye, everybody.
Bye.